Good evening and welcome back to KIVUMBI 2022. This evening our focus is on the economic factor in 2022, and recently we have witnessed what we would describe as the battle for economic models. Each candidate coming out trying to describe what is it they see as a problem and how they intend to go about fixing it. We've seen the likes of Raila Odinga talking about the social protection, 6,000 shillings monthly. The 24-hour economy by Kalonzo Musyoka is what he's promising to do. Reduction of taxes and dealing with the debt issue. Mudavadi has talked about that. Ruto, that bottom-up approach as opposed to trickle-down is what the rhetoric that we're hearing from these politicians. Now, I have Economist David Ndii with me here. We've just been having this conversation in the last hour in case you're just joining us. And I touched on something. When you worked with Raila Odinga 2013 through to the 2017 election. And so in as far as what was driving the vision the former Prime Minister had for Kenya, you have an understanding. So when you see what the plans were then and what he's talking about doing now, he's been talking about Made in Kenya and how to improve that, and several rural empowerment, now this social protection measure. Is there coherence in messaging? Has Raila remained true to what he sees he can do economically speaking for this country? Or would you tell a different story?
First, our NASA 2017 platform was not on the economy. It was largely on governance.
Right.
Because you mentioned I had worked on the Constitution.
Yes.
So when we saw the Jubilee come and we saw a lot of counter-reformist type things Jubilee started doing, like, they started to pass some security laws. You could see them undermining devolution, and the president in particular has been, you could say his body language and the new constitution don't gel very well. We saw the medical equipment scheme, which was really crowding out counties from their health service delivery function. So if you look at the reason why, in fact, I thought that Raila was the best candidate for 2017 was because he had a lot of credentials on the political reforms and constitution making. He was really, at the time, seen as the doyen of that. And we actually did a book, which I wrote most of, on just before the election, using his speeches and other things, which was really on the constitution and governance, very little on the economy. Obviously, when you read the manifesto, there was an economic agenda. Because the Constitution itself envisages a very inclusive economy, socio-economic rights, but basically the main focus of 2017 platform was to safeguard the Constitution from what we saw as the risk of it being eroded. So what happens after the handshake is that then BBI comes. And BBI is actually gone completely against, and it's now basically dismembering the 2010 Constitution. And lo and behold, so Raila is pushing for the dismembering of the 2010 Constitution, and William Ruto jumps on the other side, and he is now the one who's defending the Constitution. So for some of us, it's quite a spin, eh? You are quite confused. You are quite confused.
One at a time.
So my own sense is, I do not think that these people, the rest of the candidates who are talking constitution, economy, including Raila, they didn't have an agenda before the collapse of BBI. So the economic, there's basically sort of jumping on the bandwagon. I think he still talks about something he calls Azimio la Umoja, which is this unity, politics, and that kind of thing. So I am not quite sure that we are going to end poorly with the economic platform. And I think if that's really what they think is also important, I think it would be better that they actually developed that platform and make a case for it, than scrambling around an economic agenda you don't have. So that, and because we've had this conversation for a long time. I remember in around 2000, we had the project we called the Scenarios Project with the IEA team. And we said that Kenya was actually divided between two ideologies. one which we called Maendeleo and one which we called Katiba. Maendeleo was the economic agenda, and Katiba was the people who felt that what you needed to do was seek ye the political kingdom and all else would be given unto you.
Yes.
I still think that tension is there. So I think but the problem I think is that the collapse of BBI really sucked the wind from their sails, and they are now scrambling to find an agenda. And I'm not sure that an economic platform is where they're going to end up.
Mudavadi has talked economy, and had crafted and almost built his image around that. Where do you see in terms of clarity and understanding of the issues? Because at least he's not starting to talk about it now, talking he has done for some time now.
Yeah, I think you need to ask what problem are you trying to solve? And as I said, the problem we have is one of concentration of power. Economic power, which then undermines policies that are pro-inclusive growth and which raise productivity at the bottom. Now, if you look at what happened then because of that, like for example, our agricultural productivity has stagnated for 30 years. So if you really going to start getting, and that employs about almost 60% of the people, even if not fully. So that's a big drag on the economy. So unless you get, and that's why I said, we've pushed all the time that the only way to get this economy really going is to focus on raising agricultural productivity and on empowering and the sort of critical enabling environment and supporting small businesses. And those two things go together. So, and I haven't had Musalia's agenda speaking to that. He talks about the economy, he talks about debt, he talks about solving this kind of thing, tax, energy. I think, but really they don't get to the heart of the problem, according to me. But okay, I think you can explain why he thinks those are the most important things. I think for us, for me, for many years, it's been that if you go to the NAC economic recovery strategy paper, it is exactly what we are saying with bottom up.
That it's from down there.
Two things. You have to raise agricultural productivity, particularly of poor farmers. Yeah,
because we say agriculture is the backbone of our economy, but yet in terms of facilitating it to thrive, as you say.
But also the point is the following. I don't have the exact number for Kenya, but I think it's the same. I just finished doing some work around making the case that that Africa actually needs to focus on agriculture-led growth. And you find that our agricultural productivity in Africa on average is $1,200 per acre. In non-agricultural economy is $8,000 per acre. It's the same as in South Asia. But agriculture is a quarter of South Asia. So if you're asking where your low productivity is, or your problem is agriculture. Because we are doing the same in terms of productivity as South Asia in the other sectors. But in agriculture is where we really stick out. So you got to ask yourself, what problem are you trying to solve? And for me, without solving the agricultural productivity problem,
because even
this economy is not going to move.
We're talking about food shortage, for a country that you'd imagine we would.
It has very many implications. It makes your food expensive.
Exactly.
When your food is expensive, it affects your competitiveness. It also means that poor people can't afford food. So you have a lot of chronic hunger. That affects your productivity and vulnerability. So yes, it has sort of implications.
And 24-hour economy is what we're hearing Kalonzo talk about. Again, it sounds good, and we've had those kind of things said before. But what is it that it would take for Kenya, that if somebody's coming to you today, David Ndii, to say, I want Kenya to be a 24-hour economy, what's the first thing that I start to do to make that a reality?
I don't know what that means, because if you're looking at, I said, that if you have got very low productivity in agriculture, I'll give you an example. Our maize yields have stagnated at 8 bags per acre. The potential here is about 30. Egypt is doing about 40. Now, why is our productivity 8 bags per acre? Because very many farmers, probably about 2 million small poor farmers, at the beginning of the season, they cannot afford 10,000 shillings to buy the inputs. Okay? To buy, so they plant last year's seeds, maize, without fertilizers, without any inputs. So 10,000 shillings just for inputs could raise that we can probably double. And we did some calculation. And we said, if we were to provide some funding through cooperatives and stuff like that, it would only take about 10 billion shillings, one-off, because then it becomes a revolving fund. And you solve that problem. Okay? If you look at the sector, we had some conversation with Ukambani people the other day. And they listed all the agricultural sector sort of production, and they showed that the biggest crop is dengu, from which they make 12 billion shillings a year. Then you go down, they do fruits, from which they make 1 billion shillings a year. But if you look at the acreage, they have 600,000 acres of dengu and only 20,000 acres of fruits. So if you do that value per acre, dengu 25,000, fruits 240,000 shillings per acre. So the scope for changing their product mix and increasing productivity and incomes is extremely high. And this is the same throughout the country. But why haven't we done it? Because the elite are not interested. That's it.
From where you stand, that's it. And the Deputy President is talking about 100 million shillings to the constituencies. At that level, he also was making a case for, during the BBI conversation and debate, that if you're talking about pegging this amount that's going to counties and increasing it to 35%, where is the money? So he asked that question then and said, even with the 15% as currently is, we're struggling. So are we then seeing many such promises such as this, I will do this? The question to him also will be, where is this money coming from? Because the reality for all of these presidential aspirants is they'll come to find this huge debt. It will not be a clean slate they're coming into. They'll come to find a very narrow revenue pool that you're getting your money from, right? They will come to find corruption is a big problem in this country. They will come to find that the stagnation of exports as well, high cost of production, the agricultural issue you've raised. So where is all of this?
In his case, I can actually answer that question. Our development budget is currently about 600 billion shillings. It's all borrowed, half domestically. So we are taking 300 billion shillings out of the banks. And all the business banks are doing now is lending to government. Okay? So what I'm saying is, all this money is going to public infrastructure, including schools and CDF and all sorts of things. And what I'm saying is that we need to shift that balance so that some of the money goes to creating businesses, to supporting businesses. So where's the money going to come from? You're going to shift money from public infrastructure to private capital. That's what he's saying. Now, we do one road for 30 billion shillings. Okay? So it's a reallocation. It's not, it's a look, we have focused too much on public infrastructure and starved the economy of money. So he's saying, let's take the money and put it back into the economy.
So no big infrastructural projects under,
it's changing, it's a shift.
Presidency.
Probably not, no new ones.
No new ones.
No new ones.
Okay. I think your closing remark, we have a minute to go to wrap this up, that Kenya, at this point, conversation being economy, your takeout is just that it's narrative and rhetoric because it sounds and rings good, you know, pulling at the heartstrings, but in reality that this political will, and maybe forget 1 minute about candidate Ruto, but that this can be done and how long it would take.
As I said, you know, if you listen to our political discourse, we always say that we have good documents, we have good policy papers, but what we lack is political will. Have you heard that before? So my view is the following. If a candidate goes and promises people that I am going to focus on your issues and makes promises, and then he gets elected on those promises, the rest is his problem. So that's how you create political will. Because it is between him and the voters he made promises to. And by the way, this has been done before. In 2003, NAC promised free education.
And they did it.
When we came to power immediately, even before we could plan, the people asked, school is opening Monday. Do we pay or not pay? I was in that meeting. We didn't have a plan. But no one had the guts to go out and tell people that after we had promised free education,
Yeah.
and kids were planning to turn out to school, including old people,
Yeah.
that we were not going to do
You're
it.
not going to do it. So definitely it's candidates who
It can
will
be done, yeah.
say, who will do what they have said,
Yeah.
as opposed to make these colorful promises and renege on them. Thank you very much, David Ndii, for joining us here on KIVUMBI 2022, and you for watching. My name is Sophia Wanuna, but do stay with us. Akisa Wandera is coming up with the top stories, and later on, Akisa and Ken will be continuing with this conversation. We'll have Kwame Owino, who is the CEO, Institute of Economic Affairs, I beg your pardon, freeze there for a moment. Wanjiro Gikonyo, who is the National Coordinator, TISA, as well as Bilokero, who is former Senator of Mandera County. That's a conversation you don't want to miss a little bit later, right here on KIVUMBI 2022. Thank you for watching. We'll see you next time.